Catalo dropped from the troop cradle and plunged into starlit darkness, the shrill whine of the magnetic launcher reverberating inside her helmet. A bright red vector arrow blinked across her visor, then numbers blurred upward as the pod's tiny fusion bottle ignited. The shove in her back was almost polite. Less a rocket, more a nudge from physics. But inertia had its own language. She skimmed forward on a slab of graphite titanium, no wider than her shoulders, a skate so light it weighed less than her rifle. Behind her, the assault carrier silhouette retracted its launch rails and disappeared into the murk of radar-washed static the enemy had strewn through the gap. Ahead lay the rings, a continent of stone fragments that had once been the moon Gethys. Centuries ago, a reactor core built by colonists tore the satellite apart. Now fist-sized nuggets and kilometer-scale escarpments orbited in thin, glittering ribbons. The debris field was both highway and minefield, and every skirmisher in Kata's unit trained for years to read its shifting physics. She dipped a knee and tilted the board. Gyro fins snapped open, carving an invisible curve around a couch-sized shard that loomed up out of the black. At 90 meters per second, there was no room for nerves. You either surfed the math or the math erased you. Squad check, Lieutenant Bray's voice crackled. Sound off on pulse. Kata squeezed the haptic stud at her collar. 5 translucent dots materialized on her heads-up map, each a teammate riding a slightly different ballistic arc. They had launched staggered to reduce signature, a ragged flock flitting inside the sparse cloud of ringstones. Kilometer-long gaps yawned between clusters of rubble, and the glow of the planet's auroras flickered beyond. Pale greens and violets reflected from the ice-skin fragments. Visual on primary targets, Corporal Moody said. I make 3 Hydra-class I-ships tucked above plane. Kata magnified the sector Moody flagged. 500,000 clicks off, 3 enemy capital cruisers drifted in a lazy V. Each hull bristled with dish farms and telescope spires, giant camera arrays meant to wick every photon in the region and funnel it to the fleet's tactical computers. I-ships never fired a shot. They didn't need to. Their job was to see, and what they saw invariably died under missile storms guided by that vision. Tonight, the skirmishers would blind them long enough for the Republic's stealth flotilla to thread the rings and strike the command carriers parked on the far side. The stealth ships were coated in metamaterials, true, but even ghost holes threw heat if you looked long enough, so the eyes had to go dark, quietly before they realized an assault was unfolding. ETA to firing line? Bray asked. Kata thumbed her forearm keypad. Her board spat telemetry. Velocity 97 ms, decel vector plotted, drop window in 1.4 minutes. I'll be in scope range in 80 seconds, she transmitted. Make it clean, Kata. First volley only. Copy. She rolled left around a tumbling boulder the size of a small house. Pink striations glowed where Gethys's mantle minerals caught sunlight. The rest lay in deep shadow. Her suit's microjets whispered, barely correcting. The board's rail linear motor compensated for each flicker, keeping her flight path as smooth as if she were carving a glass wave back on Oritava's coast. A red ping flashed. Incoming debris. She glanced up just in time to see a sheet of ice the size of a parachute skim overhead, trailing glitter like comet dust. The rings were always shifting. Your path changed, or it killed you. Kata cycled her rifle, a 14mm mass driver with a barrel built from the same tungsten fiber as an asteroid drill. It magnetically lofted flechettes so fast they never saw a muzzle flash, only a hole where an optic used to be. Each board carried a scaled-down rail unit under the deck. When the rifle attached, they formed a coupled system, turning the shooter and weapon into one coherent action-reaction pair. Pull the trigger, and the board nudged opposite, canceling recoil. No heat plume, no ion splash. A sniper's dream. Her heads-up timer reached 0. Dropping, she kicked her boots free from the board's clamps. Time slowed the way it always did at this moment. She coasted, drifting parallel to a 50-meter basalt plate that blocked enemy sightlines. The board hissed to a halt behind her, masking its minimal exhaust by embedding itself onto the rock via gecko pads. Kata let momentum carry her farther, then grabbed a handhold on the plate's edge and swung around to its shadowed face. The target I-ship filled her visor, a dull graphite cylinder 10 kilometers off, lighthouse beacons blinking red up its spine. Kata exhaled twice, steadying hardened rifle. Suit gyros spun, stabilizing, but muscle memory mattered as much. She settled into the notch of basalt, braced the weapon, and told the onboard computer to find the primary sensor aperture, an ocular slit near amidships, only 2 meters wide. The rifle chirped once. Lock achieved. I have glass, she whispered. On your shot, Bray answered. All squads hold for synchronous. Kata's trigger finger curled. At this distance, even a rail flechette took 2 1/3 seconds to cross the void. The board would kick half that duration later, turning the shot into a faint murmur lost amid the cosmic hiss. 3, 2, mark. A whisper. Nothing more. The basalt bore the recoil instead of her bones. Visually, the eyeship looked unchanged, but a soft bloom of orange highlighted her visor's overlay. The system flagged catastrophic reflection from the shattered lens. Her shot had punched through the aperture, ricocheted along 100 meters of cable conduits, and shredded whatever cooled the primary focal plane. The eyeship's beacons stuttered, glowed steady gold, then died. One blind, Kata said. Confirm, Moody echoed elsewhere. 2 blind, Krantz's voice. 3 blind. 3 eyes dark, simultaneously. The enemy bridge crews wouldn't know if that was a cosmic raystorm or sabotage, and confusion bought minutes. Engineers would scramble for internal diagnostics, maybe deploy secondary drones. But they wouldn't yet shout invasion. Perfect. Reorient, Bray ordered. We have 6 more secondaries to scratch before the fleet crosses Node Alpha. Kata tugged free, vaulting off the basalt. Her board reacquired her boots with a magnetic whisper, then spooled back to 90 meters per second. She smiled, couldn't help it. Sniping was her craft, but this ballet among frozen ruins felt like being alive twice at once. A proximity klaxon blared, her visor filled with crimson chevrons. Something big flickered behind her. She twisted, thrusters jolting. An enemy drone zipped across the ring plane. A teardrop robot scarcely larger than a backpack, but armed with a coil gun and a floodlight cone. It must have been on perimeter patrol and spotted the glint of basalt chipping under Kata's jump. Contact, she hissed. The drone rotated, nightside plating glimmering. Magnetometers spiked. It had seen her. She slammed her board into overburn. The rail coils underfoot spat purple coronas as they scavenged stored current. Velocity leapt by 30 meters per second, yanking her gut toward her spine. She slalomed between 2 mid-sized rocks, then toggled her rifle to burst. The first shot sheared an ice splinter. The second hurtled toward the teardrop. The drone juked with obscene agility, actuators flashing. Coil slugs lanced past Kata's shoulder. Behind her, Silhouette's comms barked warnings. Enemy chatter flickered encrypted. The drone's brief transmissions would seed suspicion, no matter if it died now. Eyeships might already be spinning their ones, working sensors toward the anomaly. Noisy, Bray muttered. Deal with it fast, Lo. She gritted her teeth. She'd never forgive herself if her one slip jeopardized the entire stealth fleet creeping in her wake. Thrusters dark, trusting her squad's silence. The drone cut power, pretending ballistic drift, then spat another coil burst. A basalt pebble fragmented at Kata's heel. She pivoted midair, letting her board's gyro fins corkscrew the deck 90 degrees. The void spun, green aurora swept above like curtains. She exhaled, measured the next 2 seconds, and fired. This time, the flechette clipped the drone's maneuvering fairing. A bloom of vapor flashed from ruptured coolant. The teardrop tumbled, thrusters sputtered, then went inert, trailing shards that sparkled like frost. Kata let out a sigh. Too soon. A dull thump echoed through her suit. Not one of her 5 crewmates, but somewhere deeper. Enemy guns? She checked telemetry. A sensor buoy not yet disabled had finally pinged multiple heat blooms, the approaching stealth flotilla closing to within 200 megameters. Even half-blind, the eyeships could still draw vectors if they consolidated data from lesser outposts. Command to Eclipse Team, came a new voice, crisp, older, Commodore Ruiz shepherding the flotilla. Your window just narrowed. We need ring blackout inside the next 4 minutes, or we abort and scatter. Acknowledge. Sir, understood. Bray's voice carried iron. Lo, Muti Krantz. Ignore patrol interference. Go for tertiary optics now. Break formation. Anything that can see gets glassed. The board's nav plotted a brute path, straight through the densest knot of debris, high risk but shortest. Kata swallowed. Copy. Punching. She angled nose down, using a chunk of iron nickel to gravity slingshot. Mass stones whirred past, some so close she felt static charge crawl her visor. Two white lines tracked on HUD, Moody and Krantz paralleling her dive. Below them, like leviathans, the Hydra cruisers rotated, ridged hulls catching slanted light, only the flare of maneuvering jets showing they'd yet noticed. One tertiary sensor pod jutted from a dorsal fin, an aft array too minor for full armor. Kata tagged it while still 5 kilometers distant. Be quick, be accurate, the mantra hammered. She steadied the rifle, counting her heartbeats to anticipate microspasms. First shot, high, skittering across plating. Second, dead center. The pod fractured like a glass eye. Krantz simultaneously lanced a lateral dish. Muti torched a belly-mounted radar. 3 new blind spots open. But alarms bloomed across enemy hulls. Running lights flared, point defense guns swiveled. The Hydra captains must have realized their sensor network was collapsing from within the rings. No random micrometeor run could be doing surgical damage at these angles. Bolts of angry blue surged from a flak battery, ripping through rock clusters. Debris vaporized into aurora-lit mists. Kata ducked behind a drum-sized core sample of former moon crust. Turbulence shoved her board sideways. "Evasive!" Bray shouted. "They're angry, folks!" Commodore Ruiz cut in again, voice tight. 70 seconds to commitment point. If I don't get all clear, we break thrust and retreat. All those years of planning, the fleet drifting weeks on silent vectors, could unravel in a single chaotic minute. Kata inhaled through clenched teeth. "Lieutenant, there's one more gigascope on Hydra 1's spine. I can take it. It's embedded. Armor 10-cent plates." Bray hesitated. "Do you have the angle?" She eyed the tumble of stones, ran mental geometry. "If I align the board's core rails with the rifle, overcharge both. Might punch it. Danger close on power. You'll flash bloom like a beacon. Not if I vent coolant forward and mask the infrared spike behind the basalt. 60-40 odds. Take them." Kata whispered thanks and peeled toward a spire of obsidian thrusting from the ring plane. The spire's rotation matched orbital speed near perfectly. She docked to its lee side, clamped boots to stone, and folded her body flat. The board's capacitor thrummed as she bridged its energy bus to the rifle, creating a shared discharge system far beyond nominal spec. Suit warnings screamed, coil integrity risk, barrel spall risk, user mortal danger. She disabled them. 35 seconds. She set the rifle at a shallow slant, not directly at the optic, but at a tiny wedge between 2 armor seams adjacent. If the flechette penetrated there, the ship's spin might torque the weak spot open like breaking a bottleneck. She exhaled every molecule of breath and let the suit's nanofibers hug muscles still. Pulled. The rail-coupled slag of tungsten hyperaccelerated. The board jolted. Basalt cracked. Her spine felt like a harp string twanged by gods. Vision grade. A microsecond later, a blossom of molten alloy erupted from Hydra 1's dorsal line. The gyroscope lens flew free in a glitter of glass petals. But she had indeed flared like a beacon. Electromagnetic sensors howled on enemy consoles. Point defense batteries spun. Kata kicked off the basalt just as a lattice of scarlet beams sliced the spire in halves. She rode the shockwave, board-skimming fracture vapor. Stone shards whipped past her visor like bees. Her HUD lost orientation, regained it, then spun as she cartwheeled. Straps groaned. One boot coupling snapped. 50 meters below, Moody dove through laser fire, calling her name. Krantz's icon flickered amber, his comms jammed by radiological scatter. The Hydra's guns tracked everything hotter than space. Kata toggled her suit to minimal life support, bleeding heat into a plasma bloom behind her board, while she folded against the deck to cut cross-section. She became, effectively, a small chilly pebble. The next volley of beams overshot, chasing Muti's hotter trail. "Eclipses squad, status?" Commodore Ruiz again. "Bray, We've lost contact with Petty Officer Krantz. Low and Muthi still operational. Gigascopes destroyed. Tertiary, secondary arrays down. Recommend proceed. Silence. Then Ruiz. Copy. Fleet acceleration now. Godspeed. Starlight warped in Kata's periphery as 24 stealth frigates broke from behind a curtain of dust, drives unfurling like blue petals. They no longer cared about hiding. With eyes crippled, the Hydra cruisers could only guess. First volley of anti-ship missiles streaked outward, contrails etching pale spirals. An enemy capital carrier, anchored well beyond the rings, issued panicked transmissions. Too late. The flotilla's mass flippers framed by the shattered moonglow punched diamond spears through void and hull alike. Kata rotated to watch. Explosions blossomed without sound, everyone lighting the stone ribbons in carnival ghosts. She realized she was laughing. Quiet, shocked laughter. Muti's voice cracked with the same manic relief. We did it. Yet a nagging beep repeated inside her suit. O2 microfracture. The jolt had ruptured a seal near her rib. Transparent crystals drifted across her visor, escaping moisture freezing instantly. The board reported only 23% thruster fuel, and one boot was loose. Exfil would be harder than ingress. Lieutenant, how are we riding out? She asked. Silhouettes maneuvering around ringback, but now that fireworks are up, pickup's hot. Bray sounded distracted, maybe scanning for Krantz's beacon. Kata oriented on Silhouette's IFF and kicked the board. Pain lanced her hip where the broken clamp chafed, but she ignored it. The path led through sparser fields, yet still littered by shrapnel from shattered cruisers. Debris storms were the worst. High-velocity splinters from wreckage outran any simple dodge. She infused the board with shorter bursts, hopping from shadow to shadow. Once she passed a drifting escape pod, enemy, its occupants banging futilely on the canopy. She whispered an apology and pushed on. War left little time for mercy. 15 minutes later, Silhouette's hangar came into line of sight, bay doors yawning like a whale's grin. Auto turrets swept space for threats but identified her transponder as friendly. She angled toward the magnetic arrestor web. That's when Krantz's beacon reappeared, weak beyond a neighboring stone mass. He was alive, maybe trapped. Muti, you seeing that? She asked. Yeah, Bray wants us aboard first. Kata bit her lip. She pictured Krantz, talkative, with that shaved-to-the-skin scalp he claimed was aerodynamic. Leaving him felt wrong. I'm 200 meters off. I can snag him. Orders are orders, Muti said, though her voice held no conviction. Kata rolled, slashing her board away from the bay vector. She triggered a microburst to accelerate toward the beacon. Kata, stand down, Bray barked. But comms crackled. In the chaos, he lacked authority to yank her remote controls. Stone monoliths occluded her line of sight. She slowed, rifle up. A pale light flickered in a crevice. A suit strobe. Krantz lay wedged between two plates, board shattered, one leg twisted wrong. His visor was frosted. He moved an arm feebly. Kata maggoted herself to the slab, vented clamps, knelt. Gotcha, she said, patching medical feed. Vitals low but stable. She affixed a tow line and injected coagulant through his suit's external port. A red lock-on alarm shrilled. One surviving drone had trailed her, maybe homing on Krantz's beacon. Coil rounds screamed past, chipping stone 5 centimeters from her knee. She pulled Krantz tight, angled her board as shield. Flechettes hammered metal. The deck's gyro failed with a spark, but still skimmed. She returned one-handed fire, the rifle pivoting on her shoulder. First burst missed. Second shredded the drone's emitter, sending it tumbling. Board power dipped critical. She toggled to reserve, prayed. Their combined mass slowed their acceleration. Silhouette's bay receded, then loomed closer as the cruiser sidled, extending a grappling halo. The tow line autopilot snagged her board's nose and reeled them in. Kata collapsed once artificial gravity reasserted inside the vestibule. Medical technicians swarmed, peeling Krantz away. Bray appeared, visor off, eyes red. Hell of a stunt, Lo. She tried to sit, failed, laughed. Stealth fleet through? Punching command carrier now. Enemy scattering. We own the rings. From deeper inside, gravitic shocks thrummed. Silhouette firing celebratory broadsides. Engineers already spoke of repairing crants, of cleaning flechette residue from her board, of retrofitting new clamps. Tomorrow there would be another moon, another ring, another fleet to blind. For tonight, within the shattered halo of Gethys, Kata let her head fall back and watched small motes of moon dust drift through the bay lighting, each a reminder of how worlds die and warriors glide among their ruins to keep new worlds breathing. Outside, the rings glowed with fresh embers, silent fireworks over a graveyard sea, and every pulse of color said the same quiet thing. You rode the math, you lived until next time.